Welcome everybody, and to those here in person, and we have many more online, which usually happens for our International Women's Day events for Inspiring Rare Birds. Often we have a small contingent in Sydney, and then we'll be broadcasting to the whole of Australia today and even beyond that internationally. I know I have friends in New Zealand and also in Europe and the USA who will eventually be watching these recordings as well. So it's lovely to be here. I'm going to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, firstly, as our traditional owners and custodians of the place we meet today, and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, and anybody today that's in the room. I'd like to acknowledge you as well. I'd also like to acknowledge all Australians that form the fabric of this amazing country that we live in. So thank you all for being here. We're fortunate enough this year again to be invited by the Australian Computer Society to use this wonderful, beautiful space for our event. And our lovely partners, Scalaire partners, who have been with us for a few International Women's Day, who come in with a bit of support and often provide us dollars to provide a scholarship for one of our mentoring programs for someone perhaps less fortunate to be able to afford it themselves. Also, acknowledgement to my dear friend Phil Hayes St Clair, who's a Rare Birds ambassador and a mentor of, I think, more than probably 6-7 years. And he's donated access to a course for small business owners, entrepreneurs and leaders called Partnership Essentials, which will be given to someone today. We have an amazing panel of women today. Some have known me for a few weeks, some have known me for a few decades, and some have known me for anything in between that. But this group of women are going to bring us some very rich, deep, insightful knowledge, and I think based on lots of personal experience and business experience. For those that don't know me, I'm Jo Burston. I'm the CEO and the founder of Inspiring Rare Birds. 9 years ago, I embarked on this mission and vision that I had to ensure that women became more financially secure and independent through the mechanism of entrepreneurship as a choice and also the pathway of leadership in corporate environment. So this is all about money, and I think when I often speak to women about money, they either shy away, they turn away, they don't know, or they think it's a dirty word. So I'm going to share you a little bit about my story and money to make you feel a bit more comfortable. I didn't start investing in myself outside of my business when I had a business. I started to do that when I was just 19, and I was living out of home. I was on a $28,000 a year salary, working in retail and living at Avoca Beach. And I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to, first of all, have parents that guided me to save money when I was young and through my adolescent years. And I had enough money saved up that I could put a deposit down on a $67,000 block of land at Avoca Beach. It was a pretty scary thing to do. I didn't know how to do it, even though my mum was a banker. I did ask her for some advice, and she said, make an appointment with the bank manager and you'll work it out from there. So that's pretty much what happened. So I sold that land many years later and made lots of money out of it. But that was my first step into how does this thing work about creating wealth outside of your employment and outside of your business scope. I later went on to teach myself how to trade on the share market and build a portfolio there. I taught myself how to invest in property and build a significant portfolio only at the age of 32 with 8 properties, having to split that down the middle through a relationship separation. So I was on a pretty good trajectory by then. By 40, I'd kicked off my self-managed super fund and learnt through my accountant and people with the wisdom that I didn't have how to invest through that and how to ensure my tax and all the implications that go around that are okay, including, personal life insurance. Today I have life insurance, income protection insurance, permanent disability insurance, and I have private health insurance. Now, my businesses and before that with my employment were the source of cash to fuel my investments, but I was the source of knowledge. I went and found my own knowledge through people that had been there and done it, and I wasn't afraid to ask questions. The banks were and they are my friend, and I love using their money to make money. Sometimes I lost and sometimes I made really bad investments as well. And, you know, people gave me tips along the way, which I probably shouldn't have listened to. But I think the pain of losing in the journey is just as necessary as the thrill of winning in that money journey as well. So today I'm really proud that I'm 100% secure in my future financially, and that's not because I have a successful business. It's because I learnt that wealth inside the business is as important as wealth outside of the business. I'm the most valuable asset of them all, me personally, and without my good health, nothing else can work. You can't make money for your business or outside of your business without your well-being mentally and physically. I learnt the most by self-curiosity and asking people that knew more than I knew, and I learnt the numbers early. I learnt the numbers very, very, very early, and that's not because I was great at school or good at maths. It's because I had working class parents and I didn't want to have a marriage or partnership where I fought over money in the future. So rewind 9 years ago, and I wanted to make as much impact as possible, and especially around this financial security for women. And I created this social impact called Inspiring Rare Birds. We recruited allies, both male and female, really, really important, as ambassadors, volunteers, as mentors, as educators, advisors and board members. And we're now a connected community of just around 70,000 men and women right across Australia, and we're aligned to this very day with our vision and purpose, and it really hasn't changed. And that purpose is advancing the economic equality and advocating for diverse and inclusive workplaces, and doing that through mentoring, education and community connection, and particularly a community in practice where we don't necessarily have to drive the community, it drives itself, and people are stepping in and stepping forward and stepping up to make that happen. So since 2015, through partnerships with government and industry and corporations and sponsors, we've been providing entrepreneurs and emerging leaders across Australia with fully managed mentoring programs to improve diversity in those businesses and those regions that we're working in. And our corporate programs provide an important reward and retention tool for high-performing female talent inside companies, but also, very importantly, providing pathways to senior leadership roles and pathways to a voice at the table of influence within the organisations that they're working for. Our government-sponsored partnerships have been both with federal and state government, and they're providing pathways to financial independence through entrepreneurship for women from marginal and underrepresented demographics in particular. One of the ones that I loved that we worked on in particular was with the Office of Women, Prime Minister's Office and Cabinet. And I got a phone call one day to say, would you like some money? Now, when does that ever happen? And I said, how much? And they gave us funding to sponsor and under scholarship 100 marginal demographic women to go through a mentoring and 6-class masterclass program. Now, those women were Indigenous, Torres Strait, refugee, migrant, regional, rural, remote, disabled, and women from low socioeconomic background. It was a huge piece of work. We had 93% of the cohort complete the 12-month program, and was so successful that we could provide case studies to politicians to use when they're roaming all over the countryside talking about women and economic power. And they provided the same funding for a following year, second year, to run that program. So very, very grateful for the immediate impact that we could provide for those women, and ongoing impact as well. We do talk to them from time to time to see where they are. One of the women, Leah Cameron, I always tell her story. She's an amazing Indigenous woman running a law firm, and within 12 months of being in that program had doubled the size of her business and her employment, and I think last year she won First Nations Business of the Year as well, or Supply Nation, Business of the Year. So I know that these little simple connections and pieces of wisdom drop in these relationships, and it's hard to know when they're going to happen or how they're going to happen, but somehow this magic happens in what we do. And I think it's because everybody that's involved with Rare Birds, including our mentors, are in it for the same reason. We're here not to push a product at the end of a program. We're here to ensure someone's success. And that's the main focus of what we do. We have several long-term corporate clients like American Express and PwC and WestTrac who use these programs to retain and reward high-performing female talent within their organisations and nurture them into leadership roles, and particularly in organisations where executive positions are very heavily male-dominated. We've also what we've worked out from our research is that women are often, the one thing they're often seeking through these programs is business confidence and self-confidence. So you look at things like marketing and financial astuteness and, all the fundamentals of running a business or being in leadership. But the thing they come out of it with most of all is a new sense of business confidence and a new sense of personal confidence. And that, I think, is the key that leads them to the next stage of discovery within their leadership pathways. Our focus today is one that I think is so important because as women we often shy away from these money conversations, and talking about money is really healthy and talking about money is really good, and we're not in the 1950s anymore, and we're allowed to do this because women can be financially secure and independent and be really, really proud of that. Learning where the pitfalls are and avoiding financial coercion and spotting fraudulent schemes is also a huge part of the roadmap that we're talking about, along with the fiscal know-how and making really informed decisions at every single stage of the journey that you're on. From the time we leave home, we kind of should have some sort of financial goal or plan. The first day you step out of home and you're going to pay your own rent or pay your own mortgage or share a house with someone, that's the time that you should definitely be having that first step in the financial plan ready. And it doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be, how am I going to do the next 2 years? How am I going to do the next 5 years? And this plan, I think, should include financial literacy. It should include financial security and financial independence. And I know of the young women and the young woman I was when I left home, all I wanted to do was be independent and all I wanted to do was be financially secure. So that was the gold star that I was working towards. The theme for International Women's Day today is Count Her In, invest in women and accelerate progress. While important progress has been made, I think we can all agree it's not really enough. A lot of numbers tend to go backwards before they go forwards. I'm thinking about what the UN should really be doing, how they could really be doing it, what they're really doing at the moment. They're all things that I'm contemplating and thinking about. But we must ensure that women and girls are given equal opportunity to build their capabilities and strengthen the capacity to learn and earn and lead in their own lives. So today we've assembled this magnificent troupe of women who I'm going to introduce to you, and the format today is a little bit different. So we've got 5 women and I wanted to hear from all of them in depth. So rather than having a panel conversation, I'm going to invite them all up, but I'm going to ask questions to each of them. So I'm going to dig deeply into their individual expertise, and each of them are going to talk for about 10 minutes in their space and what they are really good at understanding and sharing with us. So first of all, Michelle Baltazar, the Editor-in-Chief of Money Magazine. And Michelle is an author, finance journalist and editor. She is an Executive Director at Rainmaker Group, which publishes Money Magazine, Industry Moves and Financial Standard. She's also the Editor-in-Chief of the Money Magazine. Prior to joining Rainmaker, Michelle worked for business magazine BRW and Shares Magazine in London. And Michelle is passionate about financial literacy, personal finance and healthcare education, particularly for Filipino immigrants. Interests outside of work include advocacy for gender and cultural diversity in workplaces. Please welcome Michelle. I'd like to next introduce one of my very, very, very dear friends. We've known each other for a long time. Carden Calder is the founder of Bluechip Communication, and Carden is in our financial services reputation, PR and communication expert. And she's the owner and managing director of Bluechip Communications. I watched her build this business from the ground up and take it to incredible heights during her career. It's an award-winning independent communication, public relations and crisis management firm. And before Carden started at Bluechip, she held very high-profile corporate roles within the NRMA Insurance and AMP. And then at AMP, she led the award-winning and commercially successful Olympic and torch relay communication, community relations and local area marketing. In 2022, Carden was recognised by her peers as the Australian PR Leader of the Year. She is on the board of the Brain Cancer Collective, a mentor and pro bono supporter of several charities, and she believes that achieving financial independence ourselves and empowering others to do the same makes the world a much better place, and I couldn't agree more. Welcome, Carden. Just to put a very interesting spin on things, I'm pleased to introduce you to Julia Scott. She's the founder of Love, Luck, Wealth. Julia is an intuitive money mindset and finance expert with many, many years of experience as a chartered accountant, a tax advisor and wealth management specialist. Julia is also certified in money mindset and feng shui. This is her unique point of difference. Her passion for financial empowerment led her to address the gap in the market for both emotion-driven and female-sensitive financial education and advice. Julia helps people all over the world let go of money blocks so that they can earn more, scale their business and build lasting wealth. Welcome, Julia. Now, I met Mel Cuturich, I don't know, a few weeks ago. We probably couldn't get off the phone to each other. I think we've got another about 5 phone calls lined up now after the first conversation. But I was quite inspired, would be my word, when I met you, Mel. She's the founder and the CEO of Diva Enterprises. Mel has masterfully blended advocacy, education and support to champion the cause of financial independence for women. With a storied career that traverses multiple industries, Melissa's profound understanding of the systemic barriers that women face is matched by her practical strategies to overcome them. Her innovative LIFE blueprint is a testament to her holistic approach, addressing the interplay of love, identity, finance and emotions to ensure well-rounded, well-being, self-sufficiency. Mel's voice is one of inspiration and of action, and her work illuminates the path for women to reclaim their financial narratives, challenging inherited patterns and advocating for systemic change. A prolific author and seasoned speaker, her insights into financial independence resonates deeply, inspiring change and encouraging women to forge a future marked by equality empowerment. Welcome, Mel. And certainly not least, this lady is also a bit of a little powerhouse. I'd like to welcome Christina Chun, and she's the COO of Social Enterprises Australia. Christina works to combat inequality and by optimising tech solutions and leveraging data and strategic partnerships with communities. She's built social enterprises that have been recognised by Westpac's top 200 businesses of tomorrow, Forbes 30 under 30 in Asia, and Marie Claire's Glass Ceiling Awards. Christina has been in leadership positions across the social enterprise and government and currently holds advisory positions across the Environmental Music Prize, Consent Labs and the University of New South Wales Business Advisory Council. Right now, she's a mum of 3 girls, under 6, works as the COO of Social Enterprises Australia and reads whatever she can when she gets a chance. So welcome, Christina. So I'm going to start with Carden, and this is in no particular order, but I think this might flow a little a bit about the way we want to move through this morning. So, Carden, you've had a really good insight into what you need to do and how you needed to do it to set yourself up financially over the years. And I've watched Carden do this role, building a business and raising 3 kids, of which 2 are twins. So I know we've had a few tears together at times, but there's been lots and lots of love and laughter as well. Let's talk about these 4 things, Carden. How women can set themselves up to build wealth at each stage of their life. How you can make your money work really hard for you. What are the common saving and investments mistakes that women traditionally make that you see? And what can women do to take control of their finances?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, it's nice to see some familiar faces. I think my story is one of anyone who could leave home with nothing and end up with a lot and then nothing and then a lot again. That's kind of the nutshell version. So I left home at 17 with $35. Now, a long time ago, that was still not very much money. Like, that was maybe a week's, not even a week's money. But I had a job. And I really wanted to leave the expletive country town I was in. So, and I was going to university. So I had, like, my first part-time sort of grown-up job. And I think my friend Mike and I, who moved in together briefly, pretty much used Dettol to wash the dishes and tissues to wipe our bums because we couldn't afford to go to the supermarket and buy toilet paper and dishwashing detergent. It was a lot. And when I got my first pay packet, which I think was like $35 or $70, I think I bought a shirt for $35, which was an outrageously stupid choice. So at 17, when I left home with $35, I had very limited choice, including what to put in my mouth and on my bum. And a decade later, or sort of like only 13 years later, I was thinking I was golden because I could afford to have a tailor-made suit, and I was what I wanted to be, which was a young, upwardly mobile professional in the city with a briefcase. So I'd managed to achieve a high income, but it wasn't until another 10 years that I had some money behind me, and then I destroyed it through divorce, and then I started again at sort of 41, 42. But the story that I have is really, I think, about 3 principles. One is that my mother told me from the time I was quite little that I was a shit saver. So No, not like that. Like, I know that might sound terrible, but she taught me something about myself that I haven't forgotten. And while I judged her pretty hard for judging me, that was an important bit of information. Like, she did not spare me from the brutal truth about myself. And she used to say, money burns a hole in your pocket. So I kind of grew up with this psychology that when I got money, I probably wasn't going to be very good at hanging on to it. And that was a good bit of information about how I worked. So I think understanding how you work with money and what your natural behaviours are and what your natural tendencies are is actually really important. Don't turn your face away from it. Like, that's good information to have. But the other thing that Mum did was when I was about 16, she gave me a book by a man called Noel Whittaker, who, if any of you know, is like the original father of finance and savings. And the key message in that book that I took away is that the magic of compound interest. And the idea is that if you put your money away and you don't touch it, it will grow and you don't have to do anything to get more of it, which is pretty amazing, like literally magical. So we have a system in this country which enables every single person to use the power of money over time and to use the power of the magic of compound interest and to do what the US calls early money is like yeast. So they use that expression in electoral campaigns, but the same is true for you or I and superannuation, which is that the magic of compound interest will work for you if you let it. So because I knew myself, which is I was a shit saver, because I knew the system and how money works, which is the magic of compound interest, and that time in, not timing, is very helpful. And then thirdly, I knew a little bit about how life works, which is that I was going to probably live a long time and that I was going to need money at the end of my life, and therefore the biggest asset I had was to use my timeline. I graduated the year that the superannuation guarantee started. I put money into super because, remember, I know I'm a shit saver. So what's the best money I've got? The money I can't touch. So I kept putting money into super. I always put a little bit in more than I needed. And then when I got higher income and bonuses, I put more of my bonus in. I put about 25% of my bonuses in that important first third when you don't have commitments. So even though I had no money and I was shit with money, I made sure that it went into super. So that, I sort of think if you've got a 3-chapter working life, the first 15 years is a golden opportunity to sock a bit of cash away that you can't touch and that will do amazing favours for you later. So I used that. And at 42, when I was crying on your shoulder in the office we shared and the office before that, and you came and saw me and you were like, are you okay? And the answer was, I'm really not okay. What I still had as an asset was my superannuation. So by 30, I had more super than most people end up with at retirement. By 40, I had even, I'd more than doubled that, even though I had a big contribution holiday because I had kids. And then at 42, as a single mother of 3, who was yet to understand that how precarious a position I was in financially. Your LinkedIn profile reads like my life. The problem you solve is the problem I was 10 years ago. I took that super and I made a really ballsy decision. I put it in one asset. That asset went like 4.x basically. I 4x that asset. So by 49, my retirement was fully paid for. And my preservation age is 60, so at 60 I'm like, I'm okay for the rest of my life as long as I don't spend stupidly. So for me, those stories are very much about the time value of money, the great amazing savings system we have, which means we don't have to think about it and we can't touch it, and about understanding myself.
And Carden, does your mum know that about?
Yeah, because I sent her my bank balance the day that deal settled. And I went, this wouldn't have happened without you.
Oh, awesome.
And also, she had to bail me out because when I got divorced, I had to borrow money from her to get into the home, to put my kids in, to renovate the office that I'd bought. And if it wasn't for her savings, so she used super as well, but she's a different money person to me. She can live on lentils and save amazingly. So at 42, when she was a divorced single mum, she started her super savings and she still finished ahead of most people in this country. Because she used the system.
So who helped you? Who helped you with the insights about this investment in your super fund? How did you tap into that?
I think one of the benefits of working in the financial services industry, and Michelle and I were talking about this last night, is that because I was in my mid to late 20s when I entered the finance industry, and because I was interested in money, because I didn't have any, I tried to find the non-biased information, like the basic, the 101 stuff that's out there. And what I found, and this is like an advertisement almost, what I found was Vanguard. Because before Vanguard, and BT, because they had these long copy ads that educated you. But now we have the industry super movement who can teach everybody about money. So, all of those big super funds with low fees are doing the same educational job. So there was a lot of information out there that helped me learn. And I think because I also worked in the finance industry, and don't take this the wrong way, I had a great scepticism about financial advisors. And the first 3 financial advisors I met did me more harm than good.
Yes.
So I think one of the things I did right was that I didn't believe anybody except the impartial sources I could find. And my best decisions and my worst decisions have been the worst decisions have been the ones where I took the wrong advice, whether from a man or a financial planner, 2 biggest destroyers of women's wealth.
Yeah.
Or when I did my own homework, looked for lots of sources that converged on the same insight.
Yeah, interesting. I remember I met with a financial advisor once, and I'm not poo-pooing the industry, but I did say to him, can you show me your personal balance sheet? Because I'd like to know why you're still working and you're doing this. Like, if what you're doing works so well. So he kind of never came back. Julia, over to you next. Let's talk about your expertise. What's the most, and I'm going to ask you 4 questions, you answer them any way you wish to. What's the most essential thing everyone should do when it comes to money? Is there a difference between the way men and women manage their money? How do you know if you have a money block? And explain what a money block is to me as well, please. And why do you put off dealing with our money? Why does money seem hard for people and easy for others?
Okay, well, I'll go straight to the money block thing because I really do think that's the most interesting and most powerful part of all of this. Is money is emotional, right? And you hear those stories that stick with us from our childhood, what we heard going on in our family, how our parents talked about wealthy people, whether they were good people or bad people, how they're portrayed in the media. All of this affects subconsciously how we make decisions about money. And to know if you've got a money block, well, if you don't have the bank or portfolio balance that you desire, you have a money block, basically. So even billionaires have money blocks. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's a very normal human thing. It just means that if you want to get to the next level from where you are now, it's going to require you to think differently and to kind of shift your identity story a little bit around money so that you can stop subconsciously resisting opportunities and just be open and see the opportunities. So just to give you an example, like if you're, let's just say you want to get pregnant, not you, but like everyone else. So if you're a woman and you're looking to get pregnant, all of a sudden everywhere you go, you just see pregnant women, right? Because it's on your mind. Whereas like there's the same amount of pregnant women proportionally that were out there in the world, a year ago as to when you started looking. So this is an example of the power of your mind to spot what you're looking for. So if you're not looking for financial opportunities, then you're not going to spot them. They're always there. There's always an abundance of financial opportunities around you, and money is a very there is so much money available. There is an unlimited supply available in the world, and you having more does not mean someone has less. So once you can get your head around that and address the negative aspects that you've associated with money, you will start to spot those opportunities more because your subconscious won't be trying to protect you because maybe there's a story that money's evil or dirty or it means that you're not going to have love, stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of questions in there. Maybe...
What's the difference between how men and women think about money?
Men and women, okay. So, women are just wired differently. Like, we are different, let's face it. We are the creators of human life, for a start. So we're actually quite intuitive. And we're wired to seek, safety when it comes to money, whereas men are generally wired more for power. That's just the way it's been since the caveman days, They're the ones who go out and they're the provider kind of thing, and we are the nurturer and we're the communicator. So it's kind of not necessarily naturally on our radar as much as it is for males, I suppose. And there's nothing wrong with that, with either way. But if you want to get better at money, it's just addressing that and going, right, well, I'm going to have to focus a bit more on that. And women actually do money better than men. They've done studies on this. And when a woman actually does have the drive to build a portfolio and make those financial decisions, then they actually get almost a 1% return better than men over a 40-year period. That's representative of about 25% of your portfolio with the compounding and everything. So that's actually quite big. So a lot of women doubt themselves, and this is kind of one of the reasons why we do when we finally make those investments, we do so well because we research and we really think carefully because this safety thing comes in, and for us money is very important to our safety and we don't want to get it wrong. So the important thing is to get over that barrier and to actually start and to not doubt yourself. And, there's so many reasons why we doubt ourselves. We've only really been doing money for 40 years. It was in 1984 was the Sexual Discrimination Act. And up until then in Australia, a bank didn't have to give you a loan or a credit card if you didn't have a male co-signer, and a lot of them didn't. And that was my mother, and probably a lot of you are nodding because you know that your mother had the same problem. My mother was a breadwinner, and she couldn't get a credit card without her husband co-signing. There's so many stories about this. This was in the 80s, like it's not that long ago. So no wonder we doubt ourselves. It's a perfectly normal thing and it's very human, but you can change. The past is the past, you can't do anything about that, but the future hasn't happened yet. And what you're doing today, how you're thinking and feeling about your ability to make money, whether you believe it's possible for you, that is what is going to determine your financial future. Yeah?
Interesting. I think I'm really interested in this mindset theory, because I know myself, I still will buy something on sale if I can. But then I'll go and splurge on a nice piece of jewellery because I want to reward myself for something. So there's this very interesting mindset that happens.
Yeah, like there's 8 different types of archetypes, so to speak, when it comes to money, and everyone has quite a different way of doing money, right? And this is why you might be having arguments with your partner, or you don't understand the way your friends maybe burn through money and don't have any regard for it because you might be a big saver, right? So a saver is an accumulator in these archetypes, and I am an accumulator. And so my problem was the opposite to other people in that I was a hoarder of money. So I would miss financial opportunities because I wouldn't want to take any risk with my money. And that actually can work against you as well. And then you've got the other end of the scale, which is like a romantic, who's somebody who just wants to spend on experiences, and that whole theory that money burns a hole in your pocket. A lot of people believe that, and they think money is there to be used, which is fine as well. Like, there's no right or wrong here, but it's just about not being at the extreme. It's recognising where you are on the scale and just trying to sort of not be at one end or the other, just be a bit more in the middle and understand where you might be doing this to yourself because you don't even know you're doing it.
It's very subconscious, I agree with that. Michelle, you've probably written more words about this subject than anyone has ever spoken in this room. And being the editor means that you know what's going on in community and in the economy and what the current trends are and issues are that we need to know about. So I'm really, really, really keen to hear your insights. And I've got a few long questions here, but I know you're ready for it. Yeah. It's not... Now, it's no secret that women are at an unfair disadvantage when it comes to the pay gap, retiring with less superannuation, career progression opportunities, and all the rest of that. What are the practical things you can do to help minimise those biases and make the best of the situation?
I feel like this is a Miss Universe question. Luckily, I've got my notes. Yes.
Everyone's a winner.
Absolutely. To answer this question, I'm hoping you can help me out. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and then I can tailor the answer to what the audience is right now. So my first question is, who among you run your own business? Okay, so we have 50% small to mid-sized business, and 50% salaried is what I'm getting at. My second question is, blink if you know your exact superannuation balance right now. Okay, I'm loving this. And and then finally, I just want to ask, do you have a magic number in your head on how much you're going to have in your bank balance when you retire or part-time job? Blink or shake? Okay, all right. So, to answer that question, which is really about the severe disadvantage that we have as women financially, to give you an example on superannuation, a typical male professional might end up with $150,000 when they're in their 40s, for example, while a woman would get $60,000. So we're talking about massive gaps in how much money you have. And then that accumulates over time. So it's like every year you are disadvantaged just because you're a woman. And it's systemic. It's nobody's fault. It's just the way the system's done. So my solution for that is fundamentally figure out what are the things you can control about your money and the things you cannot control. So you cannot control the fact that you are, let's say, earning X thousand dollars, but you can control how much you put into your super, for example. And you may not be able to say anything as a graduate, you're earning, let's say, $60,000 or $80,000. You have no room to negotiate. But a practical solution would be to say, 2 years from now, I'm going to have all these skills and I will hit that six-figure salary. So that's the first thing. So to address the pay gap, be aware that you are kind of at a disadvantage. You can't do anything about that, but there are some things you can do. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The second thing, I won't dwell on this, but superannuation is like the best thing since sliced bread. And I know that because when I started working as well, didn't really know much about it. 20 years later, there's this money in the, in my fund. I don't think people think about it much. So 3 in 5 Aussies don't even know what their superannuation fund is. Like literally, if you work in hospitality, most likely your super fund is Host Plus. So I know that because we're in the financial services sector. So 2, if you haven't looked, those who did not blink when I said, what's your superannuation fund balance? Please do me a favor, look at it now, kind of enjoy, think about spending it today, but you can't spend it today. But that's your money, and you worked hard for it. And then finally, I just want to say that saving is hard because society is designed to spend. We are primed to spend. We are not primed to save. And what we do every day with my job is really to say, it is hard, we acknowledge it, but it's not impossible. And I'm a living example of that. I used to have all these terrible money habits just because, money's there, it's burning a hole in my pocket. But now I'm a little bit more cognizant of the things that I can do. So hopefully that helps.
That's wonderful advice and insight. Let's talk about money shaming. It's okay not to be okay. And financial wellness is also about accepting your financial health. And that will go up and down during your journey. It's never a static line. What are some examples that you've seen, and how can we be better at facing, embracing and impacting our financial reality?
So this is one of my favorite topics to talk about, money shaming. So for example, my friends know I work in financial services media. So I'll go, so have you done your will yet? This is so triggering to my friends that I'm asking them about their will. And I wasn't even trying to judge their decisions in life. I'm trying to give a practical kind of question, this is really important. Do it for my godchildren, because these are my godchildren. And money shaming, I define it in kind of two. There are 2 types of money shaming. Internal money shaming, where we do all the work in feeling terrible about ourselves. And I think, Julia, that's kind of the money block as well. And then external. So there are these huge expectations. If you're going to a wedding, you must give a $500 gift, or else they will judge you. God forbid you don't go out for drinks and spend $300 that you cannot afford. I can talk on and on about money shaming, but I just want to say money shaming is real, and we need to stop it. We need to not do it to ourselves, and we need to be compassionate towards others and make them feel safe about talking about money and, trying to play catch up or what have you. Yeah.
So when I've asked women in the past about different financial circumstances they're in. And often I get the I don't know. What should be my next response that makes them feel safe and nurtured into looking for more insight and information?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't even know. Like, it's so hard to talk about money. Even my friends don't want, they feel like, oh my God, Michelle will know that my home loan is at like 8% and she'll tell me it should be at 4% or something like that. I think it's not a static journey. It's a kind of a fluid conversation that you have over time. But I tell my friends, hey, it's okay to talk about money and you don't have to get it right. There's always a perfect solution to all your money problems. I think we know, advice on, this is what you do with your tax and so on and so forth. But it's about progress. So you don't have to get it all correct at the time. So, okay, I'll say, maybe you don't want to do your will today, but maybe you're going to do it this year. But maybe today you're going to check your mobile phone plan and switch to a cheaper phone plan. Does that make sense?
So start small, not too confrontational personally. And then I think it's like, for me, Michelle, it's like building a business. You go like this, right? And there's mistakes and you fall over and you fall on your face and you get back up. It's the same with building wealth, isn't it? Carden.
One of the things I did in the last couple of weeks was just reach back into some of the resources that are out there for all of us, including books and podcasts and whatnot. And for those of you who listen to Mel Robbins, which might be a lot of you, look at those nods because she's like one of the top podcasters in the entire world. She's just done an episode with a lady called the Budgetnista.
Oh, interesting.
And one of the things that the Budgetnista, Tiffany, talks about, pretty sure her name's Tiffany, is that she says... there's a saying, the wolf grows when you don't look at it. And in my experience, that's been true. The problem is sometimes a lot smaller than I think it is, but it will also grow if I don't look at it, when I've let myself get into total financial disarray. And that's true in business or personally. But sometimes when you open the door and have a proper look at the wolf, it's actually a puppy.
Yes.
But our overwhelm, which is very emotional, and we're criticising ourselves and like heaping shame, is the thing that stops us from looking at it. And that first step is to actually go, is that a wolf or is it actually just a puppy?
Yeah.
And who knows? It doesn't actually matter what the answer is. What matters is that you know the answer and you are prepared to look at it, because that's the beginning of it.
Yes, interesting. I might move to Mel, if that's all right. Now, Mel's just been in Port Macquarie recently, and she's been participating in talks about financial coercion and the newly formed legislation relating to the Crimes Act and coercive control. And this is a really important part of the conversation, because when I spoke to Mel originally, we got into some of the dark stuff that happens, and that happens particularly to women from a financial and legal perspective. So let's talk about financial coercion. What does it really look like? What is it first? Like, when people say, if it's happening to me, how would I know? And how will law reform help or not help in this area? You coach a lot of women through adverse blocks that we face due to our historical roots and the buried triggers that impact a woman's life at all stages. Can you explain what these are and how they can manifest and impact our financial wellness? And these are big, deep questions. So. And I said to Mel, don't hold back, because she's got some really great information.
Okay, no filters, so blanket apologies already, just saying. It was interesting because this is an area that has been around for centuries. And while there is a new law that's come in, it comes into play this year, came in February, we still don't have a framework around it. And it's going to be enacted in, I think it's the 1st of July this year. What the issue is with this legislation that they've passed, while it's part of the Crimes Act and it's basically for domestic violence, or I call it abuse, it doesn't really coincide with family law. So it's one of those things where it's, why are we doing this in the first place? Because it's going to be difficult for any person that has been coerced, controlled, manipulated, especially in an intimate relationship, whether that is past or present, it's not going to work when it comes to defending yourself in family law. And that's where it all goes to at the end of the day. So it was one of those things where you sat back and listened to the lawyers in the room. And I will say that this forum was just for frontline workers, professionals in that space. So it wasn't very publicised. It wasn't on, social media per se and things like
It is
that.
now.
Well, it is now.
Great.
That's why I said blanket apologies for anyone listening. What the key thing was out of this whole conversation in the room was that everyone got to speak about the frustration of financial coercion, or let's just say coercive control. And that was the big thing about it. What it looks like is sometimes you don't know until shit hits the fan. Or as I say, what you store high in transit. So while you're moving along through any type of relationship, and I say that's intimate or professional, you carry this belief in yourself, and we tend to believe what we're told. We tend to listen to especially what professionals say to us or what a partner says to us without questioning or without, when you say that, intuition, and we have the best intuition. So do men, sometimes. But when you don't listen to what's going on in your body, you will tend to find that if you don't listen to what's going on in your body and you don't question why, you find that later on what you thought was not right is right. It's correct. Because as women, we override that. Coercion starts with someone telling you how things are and not allowing you to question, not allowing you to actually get the facts, and not allowing you to have a choice. That's how I explain it. Because if I can say, okay, I will use an example. A lot of women that come to me, and it's generally word of mouth, a lot of women that come to me are women that have found themselves married to their ex through debt, through situations that they have never been allowed to question, query, or even understand. And it's hard to know what you don't know. So in this particular case, what happens is they split up and they had a business together, so she thought. He removed himself as a director. She was a sole director. And when the business went into administration, she carried the whole burden. And the label that she gets is that she's a director of a liquidated company, and that she did not address anything. She didn't provide financials or documents that were required by the administrators. Problem is that she had no clue, and she had no ability to understand what the financials were or how the business ran. What that is he was the shadow director, she was the director that took the fall. The issue then becomes even deeper, because while he's left to no disrespect to anyone, this doesn't mean that it can happen both male or female, forget the gender, but in this case it's mainly women. So what happens then is that he's then able to re-merge into a different business. And while they may split up, her life is then tarnished, and it makes it so much harder to build another life, or actually to find where you are, because at that point you've got banks, you've got creditors, you've got, administrators, liquidators, all sorts of things coming at you. And you don't really have someone to hold your hand and to explain, this is what you need to do, this is how you need to speak up, and this is what you need to look for. So if you're able to make sure, and it's difficult in situations where there's an imbalance in a relationship. It's hard, it's not easy. But I always say to women, especially young women, that if you know what to look for, it makes the journey through this darkness a lot easier. You know, it can start by little things, by you get involved with someone. And I have another scenario where a partner has divorced and she's then met someone else. 18 months into it, she has moved in, obviously. She's moved in. He has needed to refinance, so it's his home. And what has happened then is that he couldn't refinance, but she had a really, really good relationship with her bank. She was great at budgeting, saving. She was very savvy to that, you know, to a lot of the flaws that he had. And while he was denied by one particular bank, he got her to go online, make an application. They got the loan. He then decides, I've got what I wanted, calls the police. She's trespassing because she wasn't on title of the property. But she's responsible for this money. Now, these kind of situations happen a lot. So, fortunately, she was introduced. We went through the whole rigmarole, and while I said there was excess funds, so generally they will get excess funds and you are responsible regardless of how they spend it or what they spend it on. I asked her then to move those excess funds into her account, same bank, so that they could see that the money was there. She didn't splurge, spend it. She wasn't responsible. And eventually the bank did the right thing and removed her off that loan. But that is difficult. Yes. That is your coercion.
But you had to intervene.
Yes, only because these are all things that we're not taught. No one shows us. And no disrespect to any professional, but I always go by that 80-20 rule. That is really real. 80% could be amazing people. There's that 20% that you have no idea what their agenda is. And ultimately, it's up to you. So all I say is you go by the 80-20 rule. 20% could be really bad apples. So you're going to a professional that really isn't going to help you much. And they will go by the system. And that's what it is. They go by the system that we've all gone by. And sometimes professionals are lazy. Whereas you could implement various loopholes within the law to actually get to the truth, get justice for this person, but it's all too hard. It's just easier to go standard process. This intervention is something that everyone needs to go through, and I call it the tree of life, where breaking down after intervening and helping her to get to that point, which was difficult in itself because our banks have a system as well, and they go through a process and they don't have that bridge within the gaps, the flaws, because while we're all the same to a degree, we're all unique. And our stories are unique. Our situations and circumstances are unique. So breaking all that down, as we were discussing, I went through a tree of life process with this particular woman because it seems to be a pattern. And if we sit back and ask ourselves, okay, what is the biggest fear in my life? And again, love, identity, finance, emotions. And I hate saying that everything is a category in itself or a box. But if you break down those boxes, you answer yourself. So what is the fear? this particular woman, first thing she said was finance. So then I was able to go through, okay, well, if it's finance, where did it start? She actually experienced so much, as I call darkness, from the age of 19, again at 12, and it started at 5, really. Because I always say, women, we go in 5-year spurts, and we change our mind in 5 years. Because I remember every 5 years I sit there and I say, I shouldn't be here, I should not be here, I should be somewhere else, I shouldn't be in the position I'm in. What do I have to do? Okay, next 5 years, again, I'll have a change of mind, and I think, okay. At the age of 5, she began. 10, 12, 11, those, I always say give or take 10%. So she witnessed her family lose everything at the age of 12. She then again witnesses her brother losing everything at the age of 19. Same situation. So then when we broke it down, she came up with the story. I listened to the story, and if you do this yourself, you can actually write it out. If you step back and review, just your normal, review the story that you keep repeating. And we all have some sort of a story that we repeat. So review that story, and what you'll find is that you'll have repetitive words in there. Generally, they become your triggers, and I say the roots. Because if you don't break down that tree of life, you don't get down to the roots and find out what your triggers are, they will hold you back every single time, or they will keep repeating in your life every single time.
Yeah.
That's what happened with this girl. I'm sorry,
Absolutely.
I'm going.
No, that's all right. It's good. It's really insightful because using a case study that's real, and I know women that have gone through those things. I think probably everybody has, and it's probably very systemic in Australia. And also, I think about those spider senses. You know, they are so real. And why do women ignore those? Why do we brush over? I don't anymore. I did in my earlier years. But when those spider senses go off, I'm like, there's something brewing here. I don't know what it is, but I'll find out. It's going to come to the surface. The other thing I wanted to mention with Mel is that she runs these programs for mothers and daughters as well, which I think is unbelievably brilliant, so that the generations are learning together. And
I think, Jo, like I said, and I'm harping on this particular case study, and God love her, she's not a case study, but because it's so prevalent right now. And it was very clear, again, as I say, the roots, it was very clear that her triggers were resentment, blame, and then she had no worth. But she took on a responsibility that was not hers at all. She just carried it on. And then when we went through the whole story, as I say, you are the trunk and your branches is what's holding everything together. So review your life, go through and understand what all the leaves are, and all your leaves are everything that's thrown at you.
and look in the mirror, right? You've got to really look hard in the mirror.
100%. And Mel Robbins does the best thing where she says high five in the mirror. I love that one. And instead of the 5, 3, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, I always used to say if I don't blast off now, someone else is going to shoot me through the roof somehow, because you have to understand, like Jo said, that spider sense that we have always been overruled. If we come out and say, I don't feel that's right, you will come up with an excuse because you've had to explain yourself all the time. But you will come up with an excuse for someone else and why you're feeling that, it mustn't be that, it just must be me. No.
Until reality bites you.
Yeah, you'll find that you'll always, whatever you feel, whatever part of your body, it's telling you something.
Yeah. Thanks, Mel. Christina, you've had a really intense International Women's Week. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. I think you've had 5 events in a week so far. As an entrepreneur and a mother of 3 girls, what has been the most effective activity you've leveraged to simultaneously foster your professional growth and secure your family's financial future? My second question is, how has your journey in raising investments for your entrepreneurial ventures influenced your personal financial wellness? Well, I'd like to know what the links are there. And what advice would you give to someone looking to invest in a social enterprise?
I probably should have requested to be asked first because I've got an autistic brain. So just listening to the panel, I'm just thinking, I gotta know my super amount. I need to actually put Will on the checklist or know my archetype. So that's where my mind is at right now. So excuse the splatter. A bit of background because of the stories you mentioned, cultural aspect as well. Growing up in commerce, I learnt that you should be saving. But when I started saving, my mum, she divorced from a partner and there was domestic violence at home. So for her, she never had a credit card. She never managed her own money. She didn't have a job. So she looked at my savings and was like, we actually don't have capacity to save. We have to spend now because we have to buy food. We have to pay the bills. So really young, I would just spend. And when I got to my, uni years, it would be like, I got to spend it first or else my mum's going to take it and spend it there. So the narrative that I developed all the way up until, and Joe, I know you don't remember, but I first met you at a conference when you were speaking. And I got into social enterprise really young because of my justice side. I want to make the playing field fair. I want to tackle disadvantage. And at the time, I was connecting young women to opportunities. The first question Joe asked me was, are you making money? And I wasn't, because I was doing charity. And you were saying it's good to be kind, it's good to help and make an impact, but you yourself, you need to also make money. And that way, with greater profits, it's greater impact. That was the first probably hard thing I heard from anyone, because everywhere I went, people were just like, you're doing good, so keep doing what you're doing. And it was because of that I started thinking I need to raise investment. If I'm going to build businesses, I can't just keep taking money out of my own pocket. And so I ended up building a platform that connected disadvantaged kids to opportunities, no financial barriers, and I raised $1 million for that.
Congratulations.
When you mentioned how the two links, when I look back, I think I made a lot of mistakes. So this is more lessons. With the $1 million that came in, I didn't pay myself enough. So I thought, how do I pay my staff? How do I use this for business expenses? But I don't need that much because I'm holding equity in the company. But at the same time, I actually didn't have, being your own employer, you can't take out loans, so no mortgage. Business expenses as well, where possible. If it's professional development, I would use my own funds rather than putting a budget line item into the investment to say, use this business, use this investment to fund myself, to grow myself. And so that wasn't there either. So there was a lot of learnings kind of looking back, and until I got to a point where my partner, Tim, is here. We've got our 3 kids, and he had his super in order. He knew the super fund, the amount, and he had a stable income throughout. So our lives were very different. And so when I looked at our 2 balances, it was quite stark. Same with being in a financial position to have a loan. That was also really different too. And then having a child, bearing, rearing, caring, taking time off, going part-time. I started to see, I think at that I had my first at 26. That was when I could see, in terms of being a woman, being a man, how different and how exponentially fast things can go in the wrong direction. So I don't know if I answered your question, yes. But in terms of the lesson, it's that comparison piece. So I don't actually have the emotion side. My autistic mind is more like a decision tree. So if you tell me that this should be done, if it makes sense, that should be done. So I negotiate because I've been taught. When you look at your salary, look at market rate, look at their budget, look at what you're worth, and then ask for an amount. You can always negotiate down from there. So I've always just adopted lessons and then applied it. But it wasn't until I think I met Tim. and I saw just how different our finances were and our earning potential, earning capacities, that I actually started thinking, hey, I think I need to do things more intentionally rather than just go with the flow.
So, and welcome, Tim. Thanks for being here. Did you find then, this is not a scripted question, Christina, but did you find that then your patterns changed from your generational patterns that you inherited from your mum?
Yes. It was an active decision because we've got 3 girls together and there is no way I would have passed any of that down. So sitting down, knowing what are my triggers, spending, like what do I typically do that's actually not a great habit, and then having that just listed. So I'm constantly reminded of what not to do and how I need to shift my behaviours. But that was a very intentional thing.
It also reminds me of some advice I was given a long time ago. I probably didn't do very well at this, but it was around choosing a partner when you're running your own business. And I probably made a few little mistakes on that journey. But it's how that team works together while you're running a business, and how important that the right partner to choose is.
Yeah. From a social enterprise perspective, like I know wealth looks at resources or material possessions, but with our girls, health, family, that's all really important too. So for me, making money is great, but a social enterprise, for those who don't know, is a business that actually has a social, cultural or environmental purpose at its core, but it has a trading model. So it doesn't just rely on grants and donations. An example is I run a cafe and it looks like any other cafe on the street, but I only employ people with disabilities, for instance. So if I open up the books of this business, where does the money go from expenditure or income? So I mostly spend my time and my money investing in social enterprises. Philanthropy is supposed to double by 2030 as well. So lots of money in the market. It's figuring out, and I think at 26, this was when I separated business expenditure and income with personal financial wellness. Prior to that, I think those two were blurred, and I saw myself as the business, and because I was so invested, I would just compromise my personal finances to make the business succeed. Separating those two out and understanding what business activities I can leverage in order to strengthen my personal financial situation. Simple things that's not monetary, like remote work, flexible working conditions, benefits that you might get as well from employers, all of those things, it's like it's a win-win.
Yeah. So that goes back to this theory that I feel strongly about, is that the health of the business is important, but the health of the water around the business is equally as important. And if one falls over, you've got the other one still there for you. If the business falls over, you've got your personal investments and security. If the business succeeds and that doesn't, but if both succeed, it's even better, right? It's more unusual for both to decline at the same time. I'm also really interested, go on.
Probably one thing I want to mention, recently we had our third, so she's 1 year old now. I worked for Social Enterprise Australia, no mat leave. And so I was kind of, should I go back to work early, a month earlier? Instead, we asked philanthropy to say that, hey, I'm going to go on leave. I'd like to take 3 to 6 months off. Could you actually pay so that we could hire someone? And they gave us 90K. Awesome. That was it. So it was like figuring out, how do I not compromise myself and leverage resources to make sure that I can actually be healthy personally.
And putting forward a valid business case for it.
Exactly.
To ask for the money. And then asking. The second thing is not being afraid to ask.
Yeah.
I had one more question for you, which is also not scripted. Building a social enterprise is a very difficult job. I've built one, and it's often the most difficult part is getting the money model right. What's your insight there?
Probably 2 things. Number 1 is measuring your impact not in the way that you see fit, but in a way that can translate to government or philanthropy. I think a lot of people get that wrong. Secondly is, in terms of raising investment, it's about the learning model. So a lot of the time people receive investment, they spend, and then they constantly go ask for more, or it's project-based. So understanding how much money you need to come in to either fund operations, capturing that learning, even if you haven't achieved the outcome, and then that comes back to your funder. Surprisingly, it's the relationship with the funder, because philanthropists are funding because of the great work you're doing, or they're investing in you. It's not like the VC style, AR or just growth. I think if you can crack that, relationships with an impact model that you can constantly refine, that's probably the key.
Yeah, so it's really understanding how to link to policy and link to cause within the philanthropic world as well. Thank you, so insightful. I'd like to, before we just open for a Q&A, and I'm mindful of not running over time, I'd like for each of you ladies to share one big takeaway for us today to go home and think about.
I'll start off with just a simple challenge your assumptions about how you grow your wealth. Because from my experience, a lot of those assumptions are wrong, and that there is a way to really enjoy managing your money. So I know we talked about challenges, but I really want you to be enthusiastic about your prospects, because there are so many opportunities now, from trading platforms, easy access to investing in shares, superannuation, access to financial coaches and information that is independent out there online. So yeah, please think about how you think you should grow your money, and maybe challenge that and think, well, maybe there are other ways.
Thank you.
To quote someone else, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. You can start with zero and end up being a superhero. And I don't mean that just through superannuation. And the difference between zero and being a superhero is very little changes in the things that are inside your control.
I would say the most important thing is to know where you want to go financially. Like, have a clear amount that you want to achieve, and identify with the feeling around that, and really try and tap into who that version of you is. I like to call her the wealthy version of, say, myself in 10, 20 years' time. What if she could come and talk to me today? What advice would she give me? The same way, just to put in perspective, is if you go back to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give her? And it's probably the same thing. It's probably stop doubting yourself, think a bit bigger, open your mind. Anything is possible. Why do we doubt ourselves? Why do we not write down our goals? You're 42% more likely to reach your goal just by writing it down. That's massive. But does anyone have a written goal? Yeah, not many. Not many, right? So this is why it's such a strong thing. When you write it down, you're focused on it, you will spot opportunities because your brain is aware that it's important.
Thank you, Mel.
I don't know where to start.
Well, I'm just thinking about time, so
Yes.
And we've got some Q&A too.
Basically, sit down with yourself, be honest and truthful to you, not to anyone else, and face whatever fear. What you don't know, but there is always a solution out there. Always. Just face it.
Might be unique to some people, but because I don't have the emotional side and mine's just a decision tree, I ask for advice very often. So just constantly pick people's brains. You know, Joe, you gave me the first hard advice. I surround myself with women as well because they know best. But yes, make that intentional.
Thank you. Now, don't go anywhere. I'm going to introduce to you Sarah McLaughlin. She's the General Manager at Inspiring Rare Birds, and she's been online monitoring some of the questions that have been coming in from our audience all over the world. So, Sarah, I'm going to step back and give you a little bit of space here.
We don't actually have anything that's come on that hasn't already been answered. So we have someone online, Tegan, who's actually monitoring from afar, and she's actually answered things as we've gone along. So if we want to open it up to the floor for now, and that may spur on a few questions which Tegan won't be able to answer, and then we can ask.
Great.
Do I need a mic? Or
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Hey, thank you so much. Very insightful, and diverse panel. Loved it. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. The one thing I want to come back to money shaming, because, if I said it to a girlfriend, man, I'm looking to lose 5Ks, they're like, you go, chick. But if you go, hey, man, I'm interested in making $5 million, everyone's like, oh, I don't know about that. So I wonder how we then, ourselves and with each other, can actually make money okay. And I just did a values realignment exercising with my business coach, and I put wealth in my values. It hadn't been in my values. I had all this other beautiful stuff, and now it's, partnerships, wealth. How do we make it okay to make money for ourselves and each other?
I've got something on that. Basically, you're allowed to make money. Money is a good thing, and more importantly, money amplifies your values of who you already are as a person. So when you have more money as a good human, you're going to do good things. Like, you're not going to turn into some Scrooge McDuck or something. And I think we have this association with like massive wealth associated with that. So you're allowed to ask for more. You're allowed to desire more. Anything is possible, and you just have to actually start. Anyone else?
I feel like you're the money shaman.
Yeah.
I do like what you said, yes. So how do you do it? And you're almost fighting against yourself, because all from childhood we are told that money is bad, it's not a good thing, you shouldn't aspire to be rich, or, but it's all kind of conflicting. But in short, I think you deserve it. You deserve to have a full life, and money facilitates all those goals that you have. For me personally, money means I can have a great time with my family. So the culture of just kind of sharing money. So you have to just feel comfortable about that, and get rid of all these misbeliefs about why money is bad. And sometimes you just have to read about it. Big fan of Mel Robbins as well. But I just want to say that it is quite hard. You are kind of having to fight all these stuff that you learn through life.
Yes, of course. Can I be really blunt? It's no one's business. It's yours. What you want is for you and no one else. We spend most of our time concerned about what everyone else is telling us. Just do it. Nike, just do it. Don't worry about what anyone says.
And life is not a dress rehearsal. This is it.
I wonder, though, whether the people around you are the right people. Yeah, because in the entrepreneurship or startup side, you think 1 mil, you think 10 mil, 100 mil, you go for it, and your network will, support you to do that. So
I think you're the only person who knows what's enough for you. And it's completely based on your whole little system that you own. And nobody else can. And comparing yourself to anybody else is the worst thing you could possibly do.
One of the questions we always get asked at Money is it too late for me to save money? And, if you're 65 or you're 70, it's never too late. So, yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
Sure. Thanks, everyone. I so enjoyed listening to all of you. So many good takeaways. My question's for Carden. So 2 things. If you're willing to share, I'm super curious about the super investment decision you made that got you 4x. My second question is, I've also got 3 young children, balancing building my reputation in the corporate world and hustling in my own business and so on. How do you find the time or energy to upskill, like, your education on this topic? I mean, today's been very helpful, though.
In my prep for this, I thought about what's in our control. Like, I think a lot about, for lots of reasons, like I was the sort of eldest child of eldest children, but both of my sets of grandparents, bizarrely, this is so Catholic, had the Serenity Prayer on the back of the toilet door. And for those of you who haven't been to AA or weren't raised Catholic, the Serenity Prayer, which I discovered later, is literally the AA prayer. But the Serenity Prayer essentially says, have the courage to change the things you can do. Have the serenity to accept the things you cannot change, and have the wisdom to know the difference. So I think increasingly over the last sort of 32 years of working, no, actually like 40 years of working, I've asked myself that question. And one of the things I can change is what I know and who I follow and what I let into my head. So I think the way that I've learnt is just little bits over a very, very, very long period of time. It's no different to saving in super. Like, I just started reading a little bit. I didn't read the whole of the fucking Noel Whittaker book. Like, it's boring. I read the cover and probably like the first chapter or something, and then my mother probably like drummed the rest of it into me. Maybe I read the whole book, but I probably didn't. So just enough of that info. Like, just I kept collecting little bits of info. So I think, not dissimilar to seeing pregnant women everywhere, I sort of went, oh, I have no money. I grew up essentially poor. My parents made choices that meant that we didn't have a lot, and I always had a sense of being and having less than others. And so because I wanted it so badly, I just kept trying to work out how to get some. So I think just a little bit over a long period of time has been helpful. But I think there are some brands and some people who have the most consumer-friendly, honest broker type advice. And so I found some of those early and I just kept reading it. So I think that's, the answer to the time question, having been a mum with 3 kids and having total chaos in my personal life. And I still think my personal finances are in disarray. But I think super has been my saviour because I understood that that was a safe harbour. In answer to the asset, I think the things that I did well, the first half of the answer is about early money is like yeast and high growth assets. So I made a decision based on everything I'd been fed by other people that I wasn't a good investor either. Like, how can one person be better than a fund manager or all the investing wisdom in the world? And so I just went with the idea of index funds, and I put my money in high growth, diversified portfolio and left it there, like, for a decade. It's one of the best things I ever did. And then when I decided to make a very balls to the wall, high risk, could have lost it all decision, I had a couple of things in my mind. One was that I had enough time to make it better if I really got it wrong. But the other was that I needed to understand the downside and to be really comfortable that I knew the asset class, and I was making a really informed choice. So for once in my life, I really looked at that particular asset. And it's an unusual story because I'm a business owner. So I bought an office and I put my business in it. And if you don't know, the SIS Act, the superannuation legislation in this country, gives you no advantage in doing that, except that because I put my business in that office, my business was going to pay rent somewhere anyway. I had to pay a market rent because legally that is what you must do. So it's not like I could pay more or less rent. But what it meant was that my business was paying off the asset and I was able to use some debt. So I bought an office, but I bought an office with a very conservative assumption that there would be no capital appreciation in that asset, but that the yield, it would be a yield-only asset, and that over time the debt would do the job for me and the income from the business would do the job for me. But that is a high risk decision, and the only reason I took it was that I backed myself in that particular asset class, in that particular moment in history to do well, and the other thing that happened is I got lucky. If I hadn't gotten lucky, I would have been okay, but I got lucky and the price of strata in the Sydney CBD moved for the first time in like a decade. Every bloke I spoke to told me not to buy that office because it wouldn't do any well from a capital appreciation point of view. I don't know, they were wrong. But that was luck. That wasn't, some of it was information and due diligence, but some of it was luck.
I think we're going to wrap up now. International Women's Day for us calls for a very united intention to turn into purposeful action. It is people coming together like us, talking, sharing, because we mustn't shy away from important discussions. And particularly, I want to finish with the violence and oppression that we're seeing globally on women who are far less fortunate than us right now. So take a few seconds to just think about those women today and every day really that you can. We share ideas, we build strategies, and then we take action. And at Rare Birds, that really is one of our mantras. And today, with more than 70,000 people in our community, we're working together proactively and positively for the advancement of women's economic security. If you'd like to be involved with Inspiring Rare Birds, then please speak to one of the team here today. We're always looking for amazing mentors, both men and women, for our upcoming programs. We've got many programs that have just launched early this year. and you'll be surprised the wisdom that you're sitting on without really knowing how much there is. And it's usually when you start sharing it with someone who's not so far down the journey or the track that you are, you get to unleash all of that amazing wisdom for somebody else's success and prosperity. One of my favourite sayings is, if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. So thank you for coming together with us on this financial journey of insights and inspiration and aspiration. I hope that you go home and you can look in the mirror and have a bit of a chat to yourself and work out what are the pieces that we need to start thinking about together. That's you and I in the mirror. And what are the actions that you're going to take, along with who are the people that you can tap into for that information and knowledge to get you started. I hope you've been very empowered by this conversation. I'm completely in awe of these 5 women. Thank you, Julia, Carden, Michelle, Mel and Christina, for taking the time out to share your stories. Some of them are pretty incredible, some of them are a little bit dark and gloomy, but they're the stories that we have to tell. And they are the stories that we must tell. People need to hear what happens and how to identify it in themselves so that it doesn't happen to themselves. So if you're in Sydney, please stay for a little bit of breakfast and a cup of tea and some mingling. And for those online today, thank you so much for joining us for International Women's Day 2024 with Inspiring Rare Birds.